Thank you very much. So I have this on here that says, how can I help you? How long have you been gardening? If you could just like type in since, when, and where are you located? I know that we were talking to Bobby and she's in Moses Lake. And what are you hoping to learn today? And that was a great question because she said she wanted to learn about grapes. And I said, well, this is about vegetables, but that's okay because I'm the grape person. So we talked about that earlier. So you missed that part. So if anybody wants to throw in there where you're from or, what you're hoping to get out of this, that'd be great. But we'll just keep going. If I can get this to go. All right, so I am Sarah Clark. This is Vegetable Gardening 101 or Vegetable Gardening Where to Start, or, uh, and Marcia is like me. She started when she was quite young. My dad went out into the side of our yard and it was solid clay, and he just rototilled the clay and we planted in it. And I didn't know it was a bad garden, but it was heck to weed because the weeds would get just frozen in there. Yeah, there you go. Hey, Norma, you're one of our trainees. That's neato Rito. Okay, anyway, we'll carry on. All right. I also am going to give a plug for the Master Gardener Plant Sale on May 24th. Uh, and it says 8 o'clock, and I'm just going to flat out tell you, I tell this every time, that is a lie. If you're not there at 7, you're going to have trouble getting in. So if I were you, I would tell yourself it's 7, okay? Because if you arrive at 8, you're going to stand in line for an hour and then get in. If you arrive at 7, you might stand in line for an hour, but you get in right at the beginning. So, okay, so that's my personal tip, just telling you. Okay, and Gary already showed this information. You go to the Cowlitz County, CowlitzCoMG.com website, and then you see it. If you just go there, you're looking for Learn With Us. And sometimes you can see it, and sometimes it's in like a side menu that you have to do the little 3 lines. Some people call that a hamburger menu. But when you eventually, it's not that hard. You could just click a little, find it, and this is what the picture looks like. And it's all kinds of vegetable gardening. And that's the button, Learn With Us. Okay, so we have 10 topics to talk about today. And the first one is, why on earth would you grow vegetables? And the second thing is, well, then our climate and when to plant. Because, and I'm leaning towards my side of the mountains, but you can don't just figure out for your own climate if you're from the east side. And where to grow your vegetables. And this is my biggest problem. I have a nice open area for my garden, but I've gotten to the point where I need more garden. And I have to find someplace with sun. And I do have a southern, my property goes from east to west. And so if I place everything to the south, that's great. Except there's fir trees, which are terrible to live with because they like to throw branches at you as you go by. But here's an example on this map here. You have your house, you have these trees, and then you have more trees and kind of a hedge. And yet here's this area. Even though it's on the north side, the sun can get over to it. And this person says, yeah, I know it's always sunny here. I think they could squeeze in some gardening on this side over here because that's the southern side and it's in front of the trees. And I'm always looking for that little square inch. I could squeeze in something else. So, so where are you going to plant your vegetable garden is a big question. Okay, and then you have to do something to prepare the soil. You can't just plant in our area, it's clay. So what can you do? You can add things, you can rototill, you can do both, you can build raised beds, you can use a shovel, lots of ways. Then you get to choose the varieties, and there's so many varieties, it's just mind-boggling. The first thing I look at for my area is maturity date because we have a pretty short summer. So some of these little small watermelons will ripen fairly quickly. So I actually have gotten some watermelon that's almost red. This is awesome. This is fantastic. Okay, then you choose, do I want to plant seeds or do I want to plant transplants? And there's advantages to both. And what are some of the tools you might want? And then the last three topics are irrigation. You got to get water to them. We have dry summers. What about harvesting? And then what are you going to do with it once you've harvested? And I would suggest that you start with number 10 here. What am I going to do with this? And work backwards. Because if you have time in August to can a whole bunch of carrots, let's say, then you want to make sure your carrots are ready for you by August. And they're nice because they can be ready and just sit in the ground for you for a while. Okay, so why should you grow vegetables? Well, you get lovely, healthy vegetables. They can make your place beautiful if you keep it weeded. Here's a very good one. If you're growing it at your property, you can help reduce the transportation costs and pollution of getting things from far away to where your store is. So that's a really important thing. It can also help you minimize purchased fertilizers because your place will generate a lot of waste product that you can turn into compost and put back on your garden. All those carrot tops, all those big long stems from your watermelon or whatever, your carrot stalk, your corn stalks, you need to chop up pretty well though. It allows you to enjoy varieties not found in stores. There's some very interesting squash out there you'll never see in a store, or different varieties of carrots, or you could try the huge variety of lettuces. There's one that I love. It's called Crazy Woman Frizzy Head. So that's one of my faves. Also, it keeps you active and fit, improves your mind, keeps you young, and it gives you an opportunity to be generous. Everybody has seen this. Please take this zucchini. This one says, someone take the zucchini, please. And I just laugh every time I see that picture. One of the big things that people ask me is, but I want to save money. I'm going to raise all this food and it's going to save me money. Well, kinda. Okay, it should be money saving because you're just buying this little seed and you're growing all these plants. Okay. Problem is you may grow a lot of one thing. So you plant a few dozen seeds and all of a sudden you're just flooded with broccoli, and it turns out you don't know what to do with broccoli except eat it for one, and then once you've had broccoli that week, that's it for that week. You just don't want all these fresh broccolis coming on at the same time. So there could be a lot of waste. You might buy too many seeds. You may grow too much to use. Or you may buy expensive equipment that you don't really need, so that could raise the cost. Okay, so there's ways to be cheaper. You might end up doing too much and just feeling like you're overwhelmed. And this is not an actual picture of my garden, but it could have been. I did plant tomatoes like this one year, and they were so fast growing, I never had time to put trellises on them or cages. They grew on the ground. I couldn't even get in to get the tomatoes. They all rotted. So you gotta have a little bit of care with what you're doing. But the good news is you can save money. You can find cheaper seeds. You can borrow equipment. You can skip building raised beds and just work on just making your land produce for you. And don't forget, the food you're growing is probably better quality than what you buy in Safeway. I got some carrots this winter from Safeway, and they were like all dried out. And I wish I'd just gone out and gotten some of mine. And you get fresh air and exercise, and your knowledge increases, and you make friends, and all these other things that are for free that you don't need a gym membership if you're hoisting things around. And you can learn better practices and still save money. Just don't get carried away. Okay, and I can tell you honestly that it's close to this in my house every summer, but we do can a lot of tomato products and we do use them up. But when we first see that harvest, it's a little overwhelming. Okay, and full disclosure, gardening, who are we? We're gardeners. What do we want? All the plants. Where will we put them? We don't know. You end up buying a lot of plants and I don't even know where to put this. I admit I tried putting a tomato in a 5-gallon bucket because it was the last one and it wasn't very happy. Okay, our climate is mild, wet winters and very somewhat hot, dry summers. Unless, of course, it's not normal. We had a huge heat dome in 2021 that went on for about 4 or 5 days. We got to 114 degrees. It says it's once in 1,000 years. I don't know. And then in 2022, we had a huge snowstorm and a freeze right at the middle of April, right before we're supposed to be, getting out and dealing with our garden. And this is this interesting map that we were talking about just a minute ago. The darkest green over here. Now, if you are from Washington State, there's something about this area that they're not including. This is how many days things just aren't frozen. Well, these guys over here on the beach, they don't have a lot of frozen days, but they also have a lot of cold weather. There's just like it never really warms up a lot there. So I think this is sort of false advertising, honestly. We have a house at the beach, and it's very difficult to grow a lot of things there. It just seems like it's always dim, a lot of cloud cover. Okay, another thing that's interesting is that one of the shortest sections is way over here, up here near, just north of, isn't Spokane, like right here? That's the short, it's less than 90 days without frost. So you can play with this and look at it and see if it makes sense to you. For our area, supposedly we have between 151 and 181 days. That's kind of a big spread. Well, okay, so we don't want to be planting when things are freezing. How about just the last freeze so that we can start it because we know it's not going to freeze. The last killing frost can be as late as the 1st of May in my area. Some people, it's as late as June 1st. So that's a lot of these lighter colors. And this was April 6th of 2022. And I mean, that's ice that's thick enough to pick up off of this plant basin dish. So I thought that was significant. And then on the other end in the fall, when does it start to freeze? They say Veterans Day, or what is this? What is that? All Saints Day? I don't know what that is. All Saints Day. Middle of October to 1st of November. Well, by then you're tired of everything and you wish it would freeze and just rot, so that's okay. Okay, here's the big takeaway though. You need something like this. You need a soil thermometer, but you can just go to the store and for just like $8 or $6 or some dollars, you can just buy one of these instant read thermometers and you just stab it in and it tells you how cold the soil is or how warm it is. And I was shocked because my soil in my little raised beds did not warm up to 50 degrees until June. And I was trying to plant earlier than that, and that was why I was having some trouble. So you need a thermometer, and you need to know that some plants really have to have some warmer temperatures, like these green beans. Don't put your beans in the ground if the soil isn't at least 50 degrees. Now you can kind of fake it a little bit. You can lay clear plastic over the bed and try to, solarize it. But when you take the plastic off, it might cool down a bit. So just make sure you know what the temperature is of your soil. Corn, melons, peppers, tomatoes. And here's the magic answer. In our area, our tomato expert said the week number 2 of June is when you should be putting your tomatoes in the ground. Now, the local master gardeners are going to try to sell you some tomatoes on the 24th of May. So what are you going to do with those? Well, they've been pretty pampered up to that point. So you could, come in, bring them into your house, put them in a sunny window. You could try to put them out a little bit as you get closer to that day, just like an hour and then back in again. You can put them in a greenhouse if you have one. But you're really not just supposed to go out and just put them in the ground on May 25. You certainly want to be putting them out for an hour one day and then a couple hours the next day and then a couple hours after that to get them acclimatized to being outside. So that's a big tip for tomatoes. And all these ones that can handle cooler temperatures, it's better if you're not putting them in 32-degree soil. You know, you want to make sure that it's in the 40s at least. So even though they can handle it colder, they're going to grow better if the soil is warmer. So we got, you know, the cabbage family, the rhubarb. My rhubarb is coming up right now. It's very happy. I don't think anything can kill that. Okay, so when should you plant your personal garden? Some of it can go in the ground around April 15th, as long as there's not a chance that it's going to freeze and you're planting cold tolerant plants. May the 1st is you're getting a little bit warmer, and a lot of people, you should really wait till the first week of June before you're really putting some of these, like, you know, the broccoli family is happy in the colder soils. But those squash and those watermelon and those, you know, more tender seeds like the beans, they really need it warmer. Okay, maybe you're not fond of broccoli. Maybe you want to just wait. Okay, or you can cheat. You can grow transplants, and then you're growing them in the warmer environment, and they're bigger so that when you put them in the ground, you've got several weeks, maybe a month or two of growth that you didn't have to start right from seed in the garden. This is why we don't ever plant seeds outside for tomatoes, because we'd never get ripe tomatoes. Or you can put plastic tunnels. I do want to caution you. These things can cook everything. You're going to come out and see cooked spinach if you don't have some sort of air circulation going with this. Or there's something called floating row covers, which is a spun polyester, which lets moisture and light in, but it raises the temperature underneath it, and it also protects from some bugs. So those are ways to help your garden get a jump on things. So where are you going to grow your garden? The question is, what is it you want to grow? And, you know, maybe you like broccoli, and they can be planted, you know, within about a 12-inch centers. Maybe you want to grow corn, though. And corn, you need about 30 inches between rows. And you'll see people trying to grow it closer, but they really don't like it. They like having that space. If you're going to grow carrots, you need a fairly small space because they can be planted fairly intensively. And corn takes a lot of space. My husband won't let me do corn anymore because he had to dig the corn stalks out when they were stuck in the ground. Carrots are a better thing. And where should you put it? You should put it somewhere where you can get to it. You know, I know friends who garden in like a community garden, and it's just that extra of having to go there. It doesn't make them see it very often. Also, have a source of water. It's not a poor thought. You really need water. Okay, you don't need this much water though. I went for a walk today, and I looked in the backyards. I walked the dikes around here in Longview, and you can look down in people's yards, and they are lakes. You should not be planting your garden where there's a lake. What kind of structure do you want? You don't just rows in the ground. You want raised beds. You know, what do you need? How much money do you have? That will help you decide. Okay, so what are you willing to eat? It's fun to grow some things. I love to grow cabbage. And then I look at it and I realize this thing is bigger than 2 footballs. Who's going to eat this much cabbage? So we had to come up with a way of adjusting our diet. Also spacing. You know, if you have a smaller area, you're going to grow smaller things or things that can be put closer together. How much water does it need? Corn needs a lot of water. And is it even possible to grow it? There's some people who want to grow regular watermelons here. Go for it. It's not easy, and you have to like have a little greenhouse for it and really push it. Okay. And some things to consider. What are you willing to eat? How much are you willing to eat? And what's your plans? Do you have a plan for canning tomatoes? Then plant 15 tomato plants that really produce. If you don't have a plan for what you're going to do with a huge amount at the end, you need to rethink that. And how hard is it going to be to water it? And is it possible for it to be successfully grown here? And I would say you're going to have to take bananas off your list. I know we have banana trees. I've even seen baby bananas. They never get ripe. So don't do that one. Most things require 6 full hours of sun at least a day. So watch out where you are. So you don't have it, you got a lot of shade. My suggestion is you should move. Or you could try moving your garden. And you might even move it to a community garden or a neighbor's yard or a friend's yard or maybe even an enemy's yard because who knows, you might become friends then. So, but you got to have the sun. Or you could cut down the trees, even though they're your neighbors. Just saying. Okay, space. This is the number one thing I see people do wrong. They read the seed packet and they don't really believe it. It says, I've got to plant this corn a foot apart in the row and 3 feet apart, from rows. And they just won't do it. And it doesn't work out. You need to believe the seed packet. And also, the other thing I see is people forget about the roots. I see people trying to grow tomatoes in a small bucket. Whatever you see above the ground, the roots are the same amount below the ground. So imagine how big a tomato plant gets. And my only problem is it's hard for me to loosen up the soil in my particular situation enough for those roots to go down, so they just have to find their own way. But I often see people put these in too small of a place. Okay. I may have mentioned I have a lot of clay here. I live on the flats in Longview, Washington, which is the former Columbia River riverbed. And construction crew came through when we first bought our house, and they took out the road in front of our house and took it down about 20 feet. Not even kidding. And then they put in huge rocks. They put in a special fiber mat thing and then huge rocks to build the structure underneath the road so that the road wouldn't keep doing like this when people drove on it, because it was like on a giant trampoline. So when we got down in the street and we turned around to look back at our house, it was 20 feet, except for this much soil on top of pure glistening clay. So the only way to counter that is to add a lot of compost and keep tilling and mixing the organic material in and raising up your beds and putting good soil in those. Because it just is so hard to fight it. If you're worried about contamination, we were just before this started, we were talking about how we don't know what the fairground is going to do with our demo garden, and there's an area that we're suspicious is contaminated in that it used to be a parking lot. So we are, we don't know if they'll put us there or somewhere else, but we're looking at, well, what if it is contaminated? Can we just not use it? Is there a way to fix it? If you're concerned that something used to be where you want to be a garden, like an old garage or something, and you want it tested, then you can go for some of these soil tests. This one is the rapid test, and you get these little science kits and you look like a little scientist, and you're trying to test, for basically nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And it's fun to do, and it's important to do these kinds of tests and learn what's in your soil. But you can also go to Simply Soil Testing or some other professional soil, and they offer actually, in fact, down here at the bottom, toxic metal testing, and the texture test, and all kinds of things you can't test for by yourself. So that's an option. And always start with the soil, and then the other things will come. Okay, and in case you didn't know, go back. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are the 3 elements that are most often. Those are the 3 numbers on your fertilizer. The nitrogen is mostly for the green of your plant. If you don't have enough nitrogen uptake, your plants kind of go yellow. And then phosphorus and potassium are for the structure of the plant. They say up, down, and all around, but they're all for all around, really. But it's interesting to know what those are, because then when you're looking for something that's higher in phosphorus, then you're looking for the middle number to be higher. And I was just reading something that said, I think it was how to fertilize daffodils, the potassium needs to be higher. And I was thinking, okay, which one is that? Is that the middle one or the end one? They both start with P. Okay, it's the K. All right. planting. No matter what form your garden takes, pots, raised beds, in the ground, don't be like my brother. Okay, for 25 years, he planted the beans in this spot, the corns in that spot, the tomatoes in that spot, every single year. And over time, the plants looked worse and worse and worse. Why? Because they were using up the same stuff for the same nutrients in each spot. And he even developed special diseases on beans that I'd never seen before because he grew them the same place for years. So don't do that. Okay, rotate your crops. That's important. So I have a system. There's a program. There's lots of programs online you can get into, and they'll keep a record of what you planted here. And when you try to move the little icon of the cabbage over a spot where a broccoli was, it lights up red. Don't plant there. It helps you. So that's a good idea. You should look into that. Oop. Okay, and this is a cool idea. If you're smart enough, and I'm not, if you notice this little circle here, something you puts on a fruit is much more heavy on feeding for the nutrients and something that is putting on a root, and then even less is being taken by the thing that's just growing leaves. And a legume like a bean is putting nitrogen back in the soil. So this, like the pink square, the legume square, is putting nutrients in, and the fruit is taking a lot, and the root is taking less, and the leaf is taking less, and then you're back to putting it back in. So this concept that things are taking and giving from the plant, from the soil, is an interesting one, and you can see what they mean on here. And this is available in a lot of places if you're interested. Okay, so you've decided you're going to plant, but what's your actual structure going to look like? You could rototill a chunk of your yard. And that's how we've gardened for decades. You don't have to build a bed. You get to incorporate the compost. You get to grind it in. You can change the shape of your garden every year. But there are a couple negatives. You either have to buy or borrow or rent or maintain a rototiller, so that's some cost. And in our area, the ground might be too wet. It'll just glob into clods, and it takes some time. Or you could try containers. Bigger is better. You can control the soil. You could control the drainage. It might get something under it damaged, like if you have it on a wood deck, it might rot the deck. But here's the key. All my containers have some version of a water reservoir, because the summers are so hot and dry here, it just evaporates the water, and if they don't have something to draw from, it can get ahead of your watering schedule. This is a nice one. It's got a big basin that's built into it, or here's one of these dishes you can set your pots into. Or you could go for raised beds, which a lot of people around here do. They're very popular. They're a good investment. They solve your drainage issues. You can control the soil because you're putting it in. You can remove them if you want. There is some cost to building them. And things like corn that need a lot of space maybe don't work as well, though I've seen corn grown in raised beds. And you have to have some construction skills. So that's probably the most popular for our area. And here's some options. This one over here is what mine look like, 6-inch tall wood. This is not a picture of my garden. Ha, no. My friends have one like this. I've seen a couple people build them this high, but usually not. And I've seen a couple of these in some front yards, but unfortunately they didn't put something through the bricks, and now the bricks are starting to kind of spread out because they're just gravity held together. So you want to take a choice. And the best option, several of my friends who have been long-time gardeners, they make waves in their garden. And they make these raised beds that are just piles of the soil, the natural soil. And they're like these humps or mounds. And some of my friends do hugelkulturing, which is where you lay like logs down underneath it and then other things, and then you top it with soil, and all that rots down and it provides nutrients. So this is a really excellent plan. It gets things up. You can control the soil, And note the little watering line. This is all being watered by that little drip irrigation system. So, which is the most expensive? Well, rototilling, if you borrow the rototiller, you could be pretty cheap. Raised beds, you have to put an investment, but they last a long time. And just mounding dirt is basically a raised bed, so that might work well. The pots may be more expensive than you think because you have to have so many of them, and they do deteriorate over time. What about convenience? I love that picture. Is it close by? Can you get to it? Is it something you can deal with? I have friends who have to have a raised bed that they can sit in a chair next to because they just can't get down on the ground anymore. So that's another thing. Okay, so you've got your garden. Okay, everybody has to do something to the soil in the spring, no matter where it is, pots, raised beds, mounds. So what are you going to do? My friends have a tractor and they make their raised beds into mounds with their tractor pulling a rototiller, and they have big heavy equipment. I don't have that. I have this itty bitty rototiller, but it fits in my rose bed. So I can get in there and I can grind it up. And a better thing to know is I like to do this in the fall when the soil is drier. And then I cover the bed with plastic so then I can just peel the plastic off and plant. And that way I'm not rototilling wet, heavy soil and getting all, clods going on in there. I need to add organic matter every year. So in the fall, I lay a layer of sifted compost on it and seal it in. I didn't do it to all my beds. Some of them just have big piles of leaves on them that I'm hoping I can somehow work into the soil a little bit. I'm really having a problem this year with that. Sheet mulching with leaves and grass, as you layer the leaves and grass right on top of the bed and let them rot in, if you get enough grass in there, because the leaves don't compost very quickly. You can just buy compost. Okay, so you're choosing varieties for your garden. Does it grow well here, wherever here is for you? That's the number one thing. Does it fit? Is it going to get ripe in time? What's the maturity date? And the thing about tomatoes is on the seed packet, it is the date from transplanting. Okay? Not the date you put the seed in the ground. So that's kind of hard to deal with sometimes. You have to think, does this thing need a support? I suggest you put in the bean support first and then plant the beans. If you wait till the beans sprout, it's very creative trying to put a support for them. Are the tomatoes determinate? They just going to put on the tomatoes, ripen them, and die? Or are they going to keep going? Indeterminate, more and more and more tomatoes. That makes a big difference. And whatever you're buying me, does it actually sound good to eat? I'm never going to eat an eggplant, so that's not going to work for me. Maybe it will for you, though. Okay, so we have some things on our seed packet. One is planting date suggestions. Now notice that this one has orange all down the coast of Washington that's the same color as Florida. You see that? I'm not sure I would use this map to be my final answer when I should plant. It might work, but I'm a little suspicious. Texas, hot Texas. Not so sure about that. Also, will it be ready to harvest? This one says it will take it 58 days. So that looks pretty good. But you make sure you plant it before 58 days before your frost date. Okay, so then your next question is, now you've chosen what you want, so do you want seeds or transplants? Seeds are cheaper, and you can buy a lot more variety for our area. And here's some options. That one is territorial, and this one is Ed Hume. Those are for our area. Those are some typical ones. There's others. Fresh seed is better. You can use older seeds, but you might have to plant a few extra in case they don't all sprout. The way you store seeds helps with germination. And as I'm saying this, my seeds are sitting on top of my washing machine next to my hot dryer. This is terrible. You're supposed to put them in like the refrigerator or even the freezer sometimes. Dark, cool place. Sorry, I'm giving myself an F on that one. Um, you need to expect lower germination from older seed, but you could probably still get it going. And you could test germination. You could take a damp tape paper towel, put about 10 seeds in there, kind of gently wrap it up and put it in an open Ziploc bag so it keeps the moisture on it and see if any of them sprout. And that will help. So that's one way to stop from buying new seeds every year. Okay, I'm going to throw my brother under the bus again. Uh, he his lettuce looks like this on the left. He just like takes a fistful of seeds and tries to put it in it. He just puts thousands in one spot. You want to aim for this, where the seeds are more spread out so each plant has room to grow. But in his defense, he has he has a long-term medical issue where his medication has made his hands kind of tremble. So we go to the effort, we buy him pelleted seeds because he's much more successful and he enjoys gardening a lot more that way. So, but that's why his seeds always look like that. Whereas he laughs at it. Thinning is your friend. You need to keep room around things. Okay, so how can you plant them with just like, how do I get the seeds in the ground without doing that? You could tap them make a little V on your packet and kind of tap them in, but I always put too many. You can use your fingers and sprinkle them. That doesn't always work. Pelleted seed works. Or you could use a seed guide. This is cool. You lay it down and you put them in the little holes and they're all evenly spaced. And one year, my brother and I, we made our own seed tape where we took strips of newspaper and put the seeds with little dots of glue, tiny dots of glue, and spaced down the piece of paper, and then we sealed it shut, and then we put it in the soil and we got it moist, and the seeds did sprout. It was awesome. Unfortunately, the robins in my garden decided that these were a new type of worm. So they kept yanking the seed tapes out. So this year, if we do that, we're going to put like bird netting over our garden because it was so great. It was doing such a great job until the robins yanked them out. Okay, how deep? This is hysterical. Look on the packet. It says 2 times the diameter of the seed. So you're like taking a little belt and putting it around the seed and trying to measure how big that is, or 4 times the narrowest dimension, or 2 to 3 times the largest dimension. So what does that even mean? If it's a small seed, plant it shallow. If it's a bigger seed, plant it deeper. It doesn't make that much difference. But you can measure around your seed if you want. I'd love to see that tape measure. Okay, transplants. Awesome. They've already been growing for weeks and they can give you a jump in your garden. That's great. They let you grow varieties that take longer to ripen because you're using your house to grow part of them. That's great. Tomatoes specifically. It could cost more if you just go buy them, so that's not so good. But you get instant gratification. That's just why we go and buy the plants. Yahoo! So first we get a plant, then we get another plant, then we say no more plants. But then we find another plant, so we get 2 more plants. This is our life. We like plants. And the tools. Does everybody have one of these little hand knives? If you don't, you need one. This is the most awesome shaped object in the world. Some people call them hori-hori knives. They come with cheap plastic handles. They have a little serrated edge. It's the best thing ever. You could use this for everything. I have a hoe, I have a rake, I have a shovel, but I use this the most. You really don't need much more than this. And what about watering? Well, if you've never known this chart before, interestingly enough, Tucson, Arizona, in June, July, and August gets over 2 inches of rain every month. Over 2 inches. We do not. June, July, August, and September. So you're going to have to irrigate. You want to avoid overhead watering. 2 reasons. It wastes a lot of water in the air because it's a hot day and it's evaporating. It gets everything wet, and really it's the roots that need the water. So I would recommend you use a hand waterer of some kind with a trigger to turn it on and off as you move around, and put the water where it goes. There's even math if you want to know how many, if it says it needs an inch total, like imagine that your little bed got flooded an inch and then sunk in. You could do the math of how much your hose puts out in a certain amount of time. And then you could say, okay, that would cover this much area, so the whole bed would take me 1 minute of watering, or 5 minutes. So if you're interested in that, look up how to figure out inches per square foot. It involves putting your hose in a bucket and timing it. And when it gets to a gallon, you stop and you say, okay, every gallon is going to take me 7 seconds. So you figure how many, then it's how many gallons. It's like 2/3, it's like 60 something percent. There's a math problem on it. You can look it up. It's worth looking up because you can see how long it's supposed to really take you with your hose to get an inch of water on the whole raised bed or whatever. Okay, and drip irrigation is really the way to go because it's just watering right to the plant, and there's not a lot of evaporation. And you could try sticking your knuckle down into the ground to see if it's moist, and if it is, you don't have to water. There's even machines you could stick in, but your finger does just as well. So when's it ripe? Whatever it is. Well, you could just eat it and see. If you know it's too ripe when the tomatoes are rotting and dropping off, the cabbage is cracking, the basil's going to seed, and the corn doesn't taste sweet anymore. So you try to avoid that. So if you just eat one and it's obviously greenish, so you wait a couple more days. Onions you can hold in the field. Carrots can sit in there all winter if you want. They do get bugs in them. And when is ripe? Well, this tomato is a little overripe, so don't do that. So you want to get it to the point where it's ripe, but like the cabbage, you don't want it to split. And the basil, you don't want it to go to seed. So if you see flowers forming, pinch them off quickly. And onions need to dry over, and then you know they're done. But the carrots, I have carrots sometimes in the winter, all winter long, but I usually dig them up and put them in like sifted layers of compost or potting soil. Okay, and the last thing is, what are you going to do with it? Well, you can put it in the refrigerator, but not for a real long time. It's not the long-term solution. You could dry things, but that does make them dried, which if you've ever had dried food that you rehydrate on a hiking trip, it doesn't quite taste as good. You can freeze things, and that's a pretty good option. You need to look up how to freeze these. You can't just take a carrot and put it in the freezer. It has to be blanched first. Okay, you can also can things. And this is where we start to have our hair raise up, because vegetables are a low acid fruit, and they could give you botulism, which would kill you. So please have appropriate knowledge. Avoid killing your dinner guests. If you're going to can vegetables, you must use a pressure canner, and you need to test your gauge every year. You can't just assume it works, unless you have the kind that doesn't even change. It's just like a rattler. You can't just water bath tomato sauce. Really, no. The tomatoes, no. You need to know how to do it. So without getting too specific, let's see, is she here? No. So I am a master food preserver, and we have a system. If you need to call, you could call our extension office at this lovely number, 577-3014, and you can ask, you can explain the situation. I'd like to know this, and they'll pass it on to one of the master food preservers, and they'll call you back and they'll tell you your answer. So we had a question on canning clams the other day, and I have a recipe. Someone wanted to know, I have a recipe for canning spaghetti sauce, and here's all the ingredients. And it turned out that probably they can't can that one. They should freeze it instead because the ingredients were too hard to figure the times on because there were so many. Anyway, if you're interested in that, feel free to call and we'll be happy to help you. And this is where you can find our information on the website with the Learn With Us. And this is our thank you.